After almost half a year has passed since the initial banner, Neuvilette is finally getting a rerun, and I think this is the perfect time to take a fresh new look at Neuvi because a lot has changed about him. And so in this video, let's go over 15 things to consider for our favorite Chief Justice of Fontaine. But first, this video is sponsored by AFK Journey, which is now available both on iOS and Google mobile stores, as well as PC from the official website. AFK Journey is a free-to-play ethereal fantasy RPG, and it introduces quite a few innovative features, such as amazing 3D canvas art world, intricate gameplay mechanics like bullet mode abilities, and you can even play the game on your PC with beautiful side-scrolling elements. Now, in this game, you play as Merlin, the legendary wizard, and you will be able to gather heroes from across 6 different factions, but you'll also need to come up with winning strategies and different teams. However, my favorite thing is the world itself. You get to explore big and diverse map zones where you can solve fun puzzles, meet quirky NPCs, and best of all, the game can be played with just one hand effortlessly. And because AFK Journey just launched, you can obtain over 40 heroes completely for free, including epic rarity units. And on top of that, you will receive more than 200 free summons by just playing the game and completing events such as 7-day login task. So make sure to download AFK Journey by using my link in the description, and don't forget to use my code AFK JourneyCreator to redeem a lot of rewards. By the way, I'll be making a couple of videos very soon about this game, so download AFK Journey now and let's play together. So, starting with the first, most frequent topic I see when people talk about Neuvilette, and that is, does he heavily depend on Furina? Well, the best way to answer this question would be just to showcase. I used 2 teams to see how long it takes to clear the initial floor 12 chamber. The first team was Neuvilette, Fischl, Zhongli, and Kazuha, a pretty serious team that focuses on boosting Neuvi's damage, and it finished in about 50 seconds, if we forgive that embarrassing mistake I did. And then I did the same with Furina, Baizhu, and Kazuha, which ended up taking almost the same 50 seconds, and this includes using her signature weapon. Now, obviously, Furina's fanfare boosting is quite weaker on first rotation, since everyone starts at full HP, so obviously this would be faster on second rotation. However, the point is, while she's an amazing support and off-field damage dealer, she is by no means necessary for Neuvilette, although she is one of the best teammates for him. However, here's where things get tricky. Since Furina restricts the team with 2 different Hydro reactions, Neuvilette will not be able to take advantage of his first passive, which offers a significant damage upgrade from 3 different reactions. And so, she definitely becomes much better with him when he has the first constellation unlocked, since now you can use another Hydro teammate with him, such as Furina, and he will still maintain maximum stacks for his passive. So that's why you might see everyone who has him at C1 boast that Furina is a must for him. Well, okay, not a must, but definitely a big upgrade. Still, continuing on the topic of his first constellation, is he bad without it? Well, it does provide that important resistance to interruption, which otherwise you usually want to mitigate with a shielder or, Dia, since she can help with resisting attacks. But as someone who has been playing him this whole time without C1, it's fine, but it can be annoying if you run a team without some way to protect them from getting interrupted. However, there are many solutions to that. Now, another big thing to consider would be his vertical investment. I already touched upon his C1. What about his signature weapon? Well, look, I won't sugarcoat it. It is definitely one of the more disgusting upgrades a 5-star can get, but it doesn't mean that he is bad without it. On the contrary, he works super well with Prototype Amber, and plenty of other 5-star weapon stat sticks you might have lying around. However, the damage upgrade over something like Prototype Amber usually hovers around 30 to 40%, which is quite massive. And on top of that, there's also Sacrificial Jade, a battle pass weapon that you can equip him with, and it also offers second best damage potential, lagging behind Tome of Eternal Flow by about 10 to 25% in damage, depending on how much refinement it has. So, 2 pay-to-win weapons. One of them of course costs way cheaper, unless you consider obtaining all 5 copies from Battle Pass, which can be a bit of a bummer, but at least you end up with a ton of resources. Although I would say that he still performs really well even with Prototype Amber, so these 2 weapon options are basically just for those who want to obtain some nice vertical investment for this Oratrice Mécanique meme guy. But enough about spending money or primo gems. What about spending quality time with him as a teammate? Does he actually offer any upgrades over existing teams? Well, this question is honestly a bit misguided, because a lot of the time this heavily depends on what the team's variation is going to be, what enemies you will be facing off against, and what type of investment the team has. As you have already seen from previous cases, this matters a lot. The thing that actually matters the most about him would be the fact that he offers a really strong and consolidated AoE damage potential. Whether this means you're going crazy with max mouse sensitivity and spinning around and round, or just strategically attacking enemies from a really good angle that consistently delivers big damage to them. His best selling point is that when you play him in teams, aside from the fact that he usually wants shielding in at least 2 different elements in the team, he is a completely self-sufficient unit, since he can heal himself and stay on the field for quite a long time. Obviously, buffing him up is important, but at the end of the day, what he can offer to most teams is that amazing hydro damage for AoE and sometimes even single target scenarios. Still, there are some teams where he shines best. For example, most of you should know by now that a Hyperbloom often can function as just a 3-person team. The last spot usually doesn't matter, you just put in anyone, and sometimes they might be highly synergetic like Alhaitham. And that's exactly where Neuvilette comes in. He is quite amazing for Hyperbloom teams, and he can even take up the spot of the Hydro Applicator, which means he can free up the space and let that shielder roll in if your Neuvi is C0. Or you can throw in a bunch of other experimental units like Dia, sweet Dia who rests at the bottom of the tier lists. Even she can help out Neuvilette with an occasional vaporize reaction that Neuvi can take advantage of when the target is burning, while at the same time, she also provides infinite resistance to interruption for the first few seconds when repositioning Neuvilette. But another team that loves Neuvilette is Nilo Bloom. I know, in this Spiral Abyss cycle, Nilo teams aren't doing that great, especially when we take a look at the usage reports that I've showcased from the previous video, which, by the way, I highly recommend to check it out. But anyway, Nilo teams with Neuvilette work nice for the same reason he is nice in AoE, you know? So much AoE. It's almost too funny if I'm being honest. Obviously, you will want to run 2 Dendro units here, and the best ones I found have been Nahida and Baiju, since Neuvilette by himself will struggle to stay alive while he's getting caught in the Bloom Explosion crossfire. So with all things considered, this is a premium team that could perhaps use something like Yao Yao and Kali, Dendro Traveler, or Kirara as alternatives. However, this does amplify one important thing about Neuvilette. He is, after all, an on-field character. So at most, if you're doing Abyss, you will only ever need 2 on-field characters. And as of making this video, the current roster is 80 units. So the competition is pretty tough. Obviously, this dilemma has been around for ages now, since at least with support or a quick swap character, you can have from 6 to 8 of them when doing Abyss. So it is a small reminder here that Neuvilette doesn't really work that well as just a quick swap unit, since the majority of his damage comes from that big bad laser, and he does want to stay on the field to fully utilize everything he has to offer. Now, funnily enough, since we're talking about supports, Kazuha is also going to be featured alongside him. This infamous maple syrup samurai is known for extremely rare reruns. Basically, it happens once a year, so this is a rare opportunity to pull for him. And honestly, comparing the two would be like comparing apples to oranges. They're 2 very different units with different purposes. Still, Kazuha does offer amazing enemy grouping, and he can provide insane elemental damage boosting. And on top of that, he works super well with Neuvilette. On the other hand, Neuvi can also be put in a lot of teams to take the place of the on-field damage dealer. Teams like Vaporize, Hyperbloom, Nilo Bloom, Taser, and quite a few more, all of them can utilize him really well. So as this new consideration, I would say if you are undecided which one to get, take a look at your roster of characters and see who can benefit the most. If you're someone who mains a Geo team and then a Hyperbloom team, Kazuha will offer very little in terms of upgrades, like almost 0 incentives to get him for Geo comps at least. On the other hand, if for example you have no idea who to use as a 4th unit for Hyperbloom, or your Hydro Applicator sucks and you don't like them, Neuvi could be good in that team. I mean, generally speaking, Kazuha will end up providing more value as a support, simply because supports are a lot more flexible than on-field damage dealers, so keep that in mind. Now of course, when talking about who to pull for, it was inevitable that the topic of Arlecchino will come up. Well, right now there's not much known about her officially. However, during Neuvi's rerun, the 4.6 livestream will happen, so you can hold off from summoning him to see how Arlecchino works, and I might even address this once more in my pre-release video. But yeah, overall, I would say that Neuvilette is a strong Hydro unit. His damage potential is great without vertical investment, although it becomes much better if you go for something like Furina, Signature Weapon, Battle Pass Weapon, or even C1, but in the end, he can work perfectly fine at C0, and that's what matters the most, at least to me. Still, keep in mind, his C1 is considered to be one of the biggest baits in the game. A lot of discussions online basically boil down to the question how much you value team flexibility, because at the end of the day, you will want to have either a shielder or some sort of a damage resistance provider in order to protect this guy from getting interrupted while he's busy doing the Kamehameha. And of course, the last thing to consider, make sure to farm enough Hunter set pieces, because that's one of the best things about Neuvilette. He can easily take advantage of this powerful 4-set bonus, and thanks to that, he can easily build critical rate and pick between many different weapons that can complement his build. Anyway, hope you found this video useful, and as always, I would appreciate it if you could press the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.